We are live. Welcome, ladies, gentlemen, children of all ages, cats, dogs, goldfish, and anyone else that may be watching.
Freaks of
Welcome
nature.
to the Wednesday night chat with a few different faces or a different face. Sam can't make it. Jason's on the road. So hello to both of you guys. And we called up from our AAA team, Music Talk with John. How you doing, John?
Good. Glad to be here. I'm glad I could make it.
I'm glad you could too.
Yeah.
I haven't seen you in what, like 24 hours?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
John went out for a walk last night and I joined him.
Yeah.
That's what we all want to do.
Right.
But he wants to walk with me. That's
Right.
It.
It was too cold to walk here, so I just walked virtually from, the other end of the continent.
Yeah. In the humidity and everything last night. It was crazy.
I'll take that over the cold here.
Yeah.
Trevor, how you doing, sir? Welcome. Trevor's our first viewer of the night. We're just streaming in droves. Maybe they heard Sam and Jason weren't going to be here, so they said, fuck those guys.
Yeah, I think I went down the rabbit hole here too, because you're like subgenres, and I'm like, well, what's a subgenre? And holy crap.
Well, I can change the title. Let's change it to something else. Let's change it to I don't know.
No, I mean we can play around with it because like I was thinking like jazz. The first person that came was Lou Donaldson because he brings in organ and different instruments, congas, which isn't your standard jazz. So that's a subgenre, I guess, whatever it would fall into. So I was just kind of confused as to where to go with it.
We'll do this. Popcorn and kitty cats.
Now we're talking.
Why not, right?
I don't have any popcorn. I have no cats in here.
Ooh.
We got a calico over there.
I don't have a cat, but I ate tons of popcorn on the weekend. So
nothing like movie popcorn.
Well, that's it. I took my son to see Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, and we got the Slimer popcorn bucket, which is like bigger than my head.
Yeah.
And my son's 8, so he had like 2 handfuls, and here's Dad stuck eating the rest of the popcorn.
Yeah. Munching on it.
Yeah, exactly. Cardboard head guy. Hello, welcome. Welcome.
So I went and, because we were talking about U2 last night.
Yeah.
So I went and refilmed my video because I had the issues of the wind on the first one.
Mm-hmm.
So today it's starting to rain. So half my video, I'm in the rain underneath trees filming. But I'm watching, and I remember this guy. I'm on the trail. We have a little trail that runs back here, and he goes by, and he blew out his vape smoke just in time for me to whiff it in.
Hell yeah!
And it was a straight shot. It wasn't like it was a corner. He planned it.
Yeah, was it like peach? Was it like peach cobbler flavored?
It was some kind of. Well, anyway, I almost caught myself. So I'm editing the video. I'm playing it back, and this motherfucker, he goes and he turns around on his bike and does this all the way down around the corner.
Nice.
My video. I'm like, you freaking.
Hopefully you got hit by a bus or something.
I know. He turned the corner pretty good with not having his hands on the handlebars, but wow. Welcome to Florida, folks.
Not the first time you've been accosted by people whilst you've been out and about.
No, I didn't know whether to be upset or just laugh it off. I was just like, wow, what a turd.
Fair enough.
The Gators don't get you, the rednecks will down here.
What's new with you, Alex? You survived your trip to the great state of Virginia?
Oh, just barely, man. Just barely. What a time that was. I have to remind myself, though, that doing the work after the fun is more difficult.
Yeah.
So by the time I actually had to go and do my job, I was like, just get me home. And it was a long way and then a long travel day. But man, Sam and I just had a blast. And we had a blast the first time I was there back in the fall, but that was our first time meeting. It was like you all know this, like you've met.
It was your first date. This is you know each other now.
Listen, yeah, and let me tell you, we crossed some boundaries there. But
oh boy,
you all have met other.
You got to clarify some of this stuff, man.
VC people. It's like, it's one of those things. Like, yeah, they can be a cool person and awesome and fun, but it's like you get really lucky when these people become like your best friends, right?
Right.
And so,
Yeah.
it was just awesome. I mean, I was staying on his pull-out couch, and we're, you just, cooking breakfast, and just, I mean, my face and organs hurt so much from laughing the whole weekend. So
That's cool.
You guys had
it was
quite a few
great.
dead soldiers on the counter by the time it was all said and done.
Yeah, we pretty much put down that 30 rack. So that
Yeah.
was a great time, which was stupid because I was sick. That was the other thing too, is I was like pretty sick over like you probably heard when we were
Oh yeah.
on Friday, just going back and watching those streams of the videos we did. I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh, and this album by Herbie Hancock, and I'm like, oh gosh, like I'm sure all that PBR was great for the immune system. So
Little barley medicine.
yeah, exactly. So, but so this was one of the topic at hand here was kind of my idea, and John and Rob too, but John, maybe to ease some worry here, the idea was what are some artists or styles, whatever genres out there that we listen to that might fall, outside of just generic classic rock and pop, right? Like, do we have those other sort of areas that we're like, what? Like, I do find myself listening to a lot of like, indie music or folk music or indie folk music or,
Right.
whatever else. And so, maybe a chance to kind of say, here's some of the albums within that subgenre, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
That sort of represent that. So,
Okay. Yeah, because it's like, even if you think of course, the first person that comes to mind is Billy Joel, but if you
always
think about all his pop hits, but you throw New York State of Mind out there, that's not a pop song.
no.
Baby Grand isn't a pop song. Things like
If you
that.
told me that The Stranger had a prog side, I would believe you.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, I mean, especially like Scenes from Italian Restaurant.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, it's just missing like a Hammond B in there or something.
Oh, he could add it though.
Yeah. Oh, that would be kind of cool, wouldn't it? That wouldn't
Yeah.
be bad. So okay, so we could do that. There's art. I mean, look at Dylan. You could go through all of Dylan's career. The subgenres.
I mean, well, that's probably what Rob's gonna do, but yeah.
Yeah, he's a big Dylan guy. Yeah.
Big Dylan guy, and I'd probably throw out some Kid Rock or something.
Yeah.
Well, to be fair, he's done it all.
Yeah.
He's a prog genius. So.
Yeah.
Among other things.
Rest assured, those watching, there will be no Kid Rock, at least not for me. So I don't want to scare everyone away. There's only 86 people watching right now. So
Well, you're on a big Springsteen kick right now. So
I am, and I'm loving it.
Think about Nebraska compared to even.
I finally just picked that up last week.
That's a perfect example, and maybe it's not so much like subgenres. That might not be like the best name, but I'm thinking like,
what is it?
Bruce Springsteen to me is like the definition of what we would call heartland rock, right? Like that's a perfect example of like heartland rock. But it's like, okay, well, yeah, but do you put like John Mellencamp into heartland rock?
Mm-hmm.
I would, yeah,
that type of stuff. And so that I guess that's kind of where my mind was going with that type.
Yeah,
of
I guess Springsteen's more of that working class mechanic, blue collar, but Mellencamp sort of the same, but now you're into Indiana farmer territory.
Correct.
Bruce didn't
Straight out of Seymour.
Right. So yeah, that's true.
I amended our banner so people know what we're talking about. Popcorn Kitties and alternate genres, we'll call it.
Popcorn and kitty cats and alternate genres. Okay. Songs about cats. Let's go.
I can't think of any.
I think Ted Nugent has a couple.
I'm going to say hi to everyone as a generic hi. I'm not going to go down every comment and go hi, 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 hi. Hi to everyone, and thank you for joining us. Let's see here. Trevor goes, I lost my over-under on the Billy Joel mention.
True.
He's so in my head right now between the concert and everything. I'll ease out of it. I'll ease out, but. Whew.
And Richard says that I know damn well I'm going to drop some Kid Rock in there. Other than that joke off the hop, I promise there's no Kid Rock.
Might be a little Taylor Swift, but
I'm not. No Taylor Swift tonight.
Well, you could consider the two. Were you on there when Scott was talking about those two?
Yeah, Folklore and Evermore. Yeah,
that's a subgenre, right? Kind of different than her pop
sure.
stuff.
Yep. But the argument could also be made: we're sort of not doing sort of rock pop sort of mainstream, and she's as mainstream as you could possibly get. So
yeah. Even if she tries not to be, I think she still is. I mean,
Right.
I'm
I
waiting
mean,
for it to get-
I love her. So it's
Rob, people are waiting for her rock record. I'm waiting for her jazz record, man.
I would love for her to do a rock record. Apparently,
yeah,
Tortured Poets is supposed to have some jazz elements in it, from what I've
Oh,
read.
jazzy, huh?
when is that drop? It's dropping in a couple months, right?
Yeah,
24 days.
the 19th of April, I think, something like that.
But who's counting? And how many record color variants are we going to have with this one?
There's 4 of them so far. I'm only doing one of them. I'm not doing the other nonsense.
They're just warming up with the 4. And that's not counting the Target and the Walmart and the Urban Outfitters. And
Here's what bugs me. Alex can weigh in on this too, because he's a Swiftie like me. I don't want to do the 4 different versions. However, the thing that pisses me off is on each of the 4 different versions, there is a different bonus track.
Yep.
So if you want all 4 bonus tracks,
that's shitty. I don't know. I don't
that's
like
kind of shitty. I don't want to buy the album 4 times, but I want all 4 songs. I mean, obviously, I'll just download them. But
What do you think the
God,
odds are, Rob, that there's another version that's going to get released later on that's going to include all of them?
Yep. Right.
probably.
And then all those suckers who bought all 4 are also going to buy that one because they don't care.
Yep.
And they don't even bring the price down. I could see if they said, okay, we're going to do all these variants. Let's get the prices down to $20 at least or something.
Here's the flip side of this, though, right? As much as that, it's kind of a shitty cash grab. It's a lot of young people are buying her records because of it, and it's good for the business. So
Yeah. Well, look at Melinda. Melinda made a good point. You know, there's people that collect every single one of those, and she's wondering, you know, are they going to be like the Beatles records? It's hard to compare the two.
I don't know that. I don't think that's
Can be
far
like
much
that.
of a stretch. I don't think it's much of a stretch at all. We're not talking the quality of music, but
That's what I'm
cultural
wondering.
reach and whatever. I don't think that's not a crazy comparison.
Because to me,
Well-
it's going to be she's hot now, but it's going to just fade out to me.
Oh, is she ever?
It's going to fade.
Oh, you meant hot like it.
Yeah, here we go. Okay.
Also, the other comparison is, Beatles records are everywhere, but they also still fetch, a good amount of money. There's a billion of them, but they're still, in the grand scheme of things, more, they're not rare or like they're not grail expensive, obviously.
Well,
with the exception
they're
of
not, because
But-
the biggest selling artist for decades was the Beatles. So it's,
Yeah.
and even first presses. Think of it, there were millions of those pressed back in the day.
Right.
Yeah. Or, the other side of that is, the highest selling album of all time is Eagles' Greatest Hits. 2 or 1? Just
One.
one.
Yeah.
One,
I mean, the thing sold 60, but that's a $5 record,
right?
Yeah.
And so I'm curious
Yeah.
where that ends up in however many years, if those are going to be like, grails of like, oh my God, like Rob, I always joke, like in 20 years, are we going to be telling the story about having quote unquote Scooter's version? And then is that going to be something that people in 20 years are even talking about? Or are we going to be sitting there with like, oh, look at this thing, like this,
This is the Taylor Swift Butcher cover.
right.
Maybe. Who knows?
Which one will that be?
Who knows?
Yeah.
Love her or hate her, she's done wonders for the vinyl industry and
Yeah.
music in general, getting a whole new generation of people into music, and that's a good thing, whether you like her music or not. So
Yeah, and that's a big thing I learned in the VC is not to be so judgmental. You don't realize how judgmental you are. But you got to realize.
and there is a lot of that. There's a lot of.
Yeah.
I'm not mentioning names. There's a whole segment of the
Yes.
vinyl community that I think are
Yeah.
whatever, and
It's drama, and I'm
they
trying
stay
to.
in their lane. I'll stay in my lane.
Yeah.
I don't contribute, but they're often very judgy. Well, you can't like that because that was a very commercial record. Well, it was a commercial record for a reason, obviously.
Yeah.
People bitch about something, like I always use this example. People bitch about Rumors because it sold a bazillion copies. Do you know why it sold a bazillion copies? Because it's one of the best goddamn records ever made.
Good. Right. We were just talking about that. You can still put that thing on. It still sounds fresh. I mean,
Yeah.
there's certain albums that do that.
It doesn't. You don't have to like obscure stuff. You like whatever you like, and that doesn't make you any more or less of a record collector.
Right. And I'm trying to get rid of that guilty pleasure term also. There's no guilty pleasure. There's no, you might feel embarrassed to say, yeah, I like that Barry Manilow song, but
I was like that when I started. Again, love
Yeah.
Taylor Swift. I'm a 46-year-old man. And I'm like, I'm not
Yeah,
supposed
but
to.
with a great body.
Wow.
Yeah, you are. I mean, come on.
I mean, maybe from here to here, maybe.
Dad bod extreme, man. Come on.
Exactly. But and then I finally said, you know what? Fuck it. There's nothing wrong with liking it. I like it.
Exactly. If Mazzy can sit there and say how wonderful Yoko Ono's Yodel
Oh.
Yodel Yodel is then I can say I like Barry Manilow. I can say
Exactly.
I like whoever. Engelbert Humperdinck. Who knows?
Right.
So
Exactly. What do we got? A few people saying stuff here.
I like that. Yeah, Taylor Swift Prague.
I know, not to keep on this Taylor Swift train, Rob. We talked about this months ago. At some point, you would have to think she's going to drop an Eras Tour live vinyl box set, right? I mean,
Yeah.
could you imagine? Could you imagine?
I was at my favorite record store last week, the one I was telling you about, where I picked up Nebraska, and I picked up those 2 Taylor Swift bootlegs. There's a bootleg greatest hits. It's a bootleg of her alleged greatest hits. It's like 4 LPs. It's made in Japan. I'm like, I'm not gonna buy that because there's nothing new on there. But I'm like, man, she's got more than enough to do a good box set, and the Eras Tour is a perfect way to do it.
Man,
that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
What's Trevor saying? But we can bitch about rumors coming out on a picture disc at least.
that's true.
Yeah.
Where do you guys stand on picture discs? I've got a few only for the novelty. I don't think I've ever listened to them.
No, I don't really. Yeah, I don't really display them, so I don't really look. Yeah.
I think, my thing with it, I don't have any. I don't, because I don't have any interest in playing them. Now, I think my thing is, especially with the Record Store Day stuff, is that here's them doing a Rumors picture disc. I'm like, whatever about, because Rumors has had a gazillion pressings, and you can find a gazillion different pressings anywhere.
Yep.
But where people get, I think, sassy about the picture disc stuff is, it's like The Cure, right? I mean, they're a perfect example. Their albums are hard to find. Stuff's out of print. Stuff's really expensive. And everybody's always looking for their stuff, especially that early to mid to late 90s stuff.
Yeah.
You can't find it anywhere. It's buku expensive, and everybody's waiting for a repress. And every Record Store Day, they're like, here, we're giving you everything you wanted with like this record from 94 or whatever it is.
Right.
And it's a picture disc.
Yeah.
Every time,
Well,
my wife is one of the, and I can't remember which Cure record it is. It's one of the OG records, an original press, and she picked it up years ago on eBay for like $20. And you go on Discogs and it's like $500-600. I'm like, son of a bitch.
Yeah.
And she's done that a few times. She's got like 8 or 9 records that she's scooped for nothing, and they're worth hundreds. I go, a horseshoe up your ass. But yeah, she's got one of those OG 90s Cure records.
Oh,
Yeah. Well, the worst thing about the picture disc is what they come in. It's always that plastic that just stuck to it.
Weird. It's like, that like sticky envelope thing. Yeah.
Well, that can't be good.
And it's that hard plastic that leaches out. And I was thinking that as I was flipping through to pull some records tonight, I still have 2 or 3 picture discs that are in that hard plastic that leaches. And I'm like, I got to take that up. And I'm like, what do I put them in?
Yeah, that's tough. I have a couple where I've actually where I have a double or triple album and it doesn't fit in the sleeve. So I'll pull the records out, put all 3 records in a sleeve by themselves next to the record and let them sit there. So it doesn't work for everything, but it works for some things.
Sure.
Yeah.
Richard says, it seems the more artists and genres you're into, the less inclined you are to be judgy. Yes, I agree. Great comment.
Well, yeah, and in the VC,
I'm gonna give that a star.
Yeah.
I don't know why that does anything, but
yeah, the VC kind of opens you up to that. Once you start exploring more, you start going, it's not. Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff out here.
Yep. So on that note, folks, what we're going to chat about tonight, and this is a topic that Alex came up with. We're going to sort of talk about some genres that we like that are kind of outside of the mainstream classic rock, pop, top 40 radio kind of, doesn't have to be obscure, but, pick a genre that you're kind of fond of and show a few records that you like from that genre to maybe whet people's appetites. We'll go around the horn a couple times and maybe show you some new stuff tonight. John, you're our honored guest and AAA call up since tomorrow's opening day. You want to go first?
Yeah, I don't really have anything pulled yet, so.
Oh, well, then Alex can go first if you want.
Yeah, I can.
Yeah.
I can pull a couple. Or I can just talk about them.
Whatever you prefer.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Pull some records, John. We want to see them.
Yeah. So you do your thing, Alex, and I'll grab one here.
All right.
All right.
Well, the first thing, and actually, I'm glad John's here. I mean, I had these pulled before we called up John, but I know a recent thing for John has been some jazz. He mentioned Lou Donaldson earlier, but not specifically talking about jazz, but to me, one of my favorite, again, quote unquote, subgenres, whatever that means, is what has become known as jazz fusion. And so, for those who don't know, jazz fusion really began in the late 1960s and then became pretty popular in the early to mid 70s, and has really actually become still pretty popular. There's a ton of jazz fusion artists out there still today, but it's this idea of marrying, obviously, a lot of the jazz stuff that was going on in the mid 60s, all that sort of post bop, hard bop type stuff that was going on, and then sort of bringing in a lot of the improvisation and virtuosity of a lot of the sort of hard rock bands, some of the prog bands, whatever that might have been, also of the early 70s, and then sort of merging them. For me, I sort of fell in love with jazz fusion because it was my entryway into jazz. And so jazz is something that scares a lot of people. It turns a lot of people off. They have no interest in it. They don't know where to begin. But for me, that step into it was almost easy in a sense because I was able to love these fusion artists because to me, it didn't feel like jazz. It didn't sound like jazz. It just felt like more of a combination of some hard rock and some funk and a little bit of soul and a little bit of these other things kind of tossed in there. So, historians will say the first jazz fusion record ever was Miles Davis in a Silent Way, 1968, I believe. And then more so Bitches Brew in 1970. But I always, as much as I love those records, I always sort of push people away from those records because yes, that was sort of the beginning, but those are not exactly accessible. I don't think they're good records to get into the genre per se. To me, and I'll start with Miles Davis because he was the guy, like so many other things, that really founded this sort of genre. To me, the best way to go is with his 1971 record, A Tribute to Jack Johnson. This was the original cover here, and then was sort of immediately like repressed on this cover. But this, to me, when I heard this, first of all, it's two 25-minute songs, obviously all instrumental with the exception of some narration here and there. But this, to me, felt like a rock album with some trumpet thrown in sometimes. Like, it's hard rock, it's funky, it just gets your head bopping. It doesn't feel like you're listening to, like, that jazz that we've sort of grown up to learn about. And so as soon as I heard this, I was like, oh, yeah, this is what I could get into. So I'll say this, like, if you're struggling with jazz, you don't know if you want to get into it, but maybe you're a little interested, don't know where to go. This, to me, is the most accessible, best place to start for any Miles Davis record, for sure. And I think from here, you're able to sort of build that bridge out. Now
what year was that?
What's that?
What year was Jack Johnson?
That was 1971, early, I think February 1971.
Now, if Hendrix had lived.
Correct. So great point. So the deal was that was with John McLaughlin, who I'll talk about here in a second, who has become one of the greatest, guitarists ever, specifically within the genre. But the idea was that what was going on here and then after, especially with the On the Corner type stuff, some of that funky type stuff, the rumor was that Miles and Jimi Hendrix were supposed to be the partners on those type of records. So later in the same year, I'm pulling. This might not be as accessible, but at the same time, here's the best way I could put this: is like these are fusion records with like shredding guitar. Like that would be to me of like if I'm coming from like a hard rock background and I love Zeppelin or I love Hendrix or I love whatever else, and people just ripping guitar. That is the entry point to me because you're like, this is jazz and this guy's just up there ripping. So later in 71, you have a number of cats that were on those Miles Davis records that went off and formed their jazz fusion group. There's probably like a big four and then a whole bunch of other big jazz fusion groups. But the biggest one for me and the ones that sort of define the sound was the Mahavishnu Orchestra, and this is their first record, the Intermounting Flame. So you're pulling John McLaughlin and Billy Cobham from that Miles Davis band that was going on. This is absolutely smoking, burning, aggressive, loud, funky. I mean, this is just like like you don't hear this and think like Duke Ellington, but it falls again within that same camp. They put out a number of records that are all just absolutely outstanding, but this is sort of where it began. Again, just the same year as Jack Johnson, just a little bit later on. Arguably their best, but again, so many of those records that they put together beforehand are just awesome. So, you know, if you look at the musicianship, a lot of these jazz fusion bands, a lot of people will say, okay, maybe Mahavishnu Orchestra was the best of like the musicianship. I mean, it's kind of insane. You got Jan Hammer on here. You got Rick Laird on here. I mean, just an insane lineup of individuals. But to me, again, this is mandatory jazz fusion. Thank you. I know burning and smoking. It's like that. Those are the adjectives, or I guess the verbs. It doesn't matter. That come to mind when talking about this record. And then last, I think for sort of the records to get into the genre or that really define the genre, there are so many, and it's so hard to pick just three. But to me, I always go to this one, especially for my proggers out there. If you're a prog guy and you like Yes and you like, you like a lot of that kind of stuff, to me, this is the perfect bridge point, and it's an obvious answer, but it's true. And that's Romantic Warrior from Return to Forever. Return to Forever is probably my favorite jazz fusion band. I think, again, mostly because like the guitar is so heavy, but specifically on this one, you have the great Al Di Meola. But, he's, again, just up there, just shredding in the best of ways. But also Return to Forever, I mean, that's Chick Corea's game. I mean, Chick Corea also came from Miles Davis and a lot of other things too. But to me, this is like the progger's entry point. If you're a prog guy and you like all those proggy, self-indulgent bands, I mean, the final track on this record is called The Duel of the Jester and the Tyrant, Parts 1 and 2. And it's like 12 minutes long. I mean, come on. But I think if you're interested in the genre itself, don't know where to start, I think this is a perfect place to start, along with a tribute to Jack Johnson from Miles Davis, and then Intermountain Flame from Mahavishnu Orchestra. So those are my picks for jazz fusion.
Very cool.
Very good, man. Very good. Very good. What do we got here? A few comments. When we were talking about what do we do with picture sleeves, Vinyl Sanctuary says Vinyl Storage Solutions has every type of inner and outer sleeve, including picture discs. To which some smartass in the comments said, if you use Northern 10 as your discount code.
I was going to ask if I wanted to save 10%, what would I do?
You would do that.
Yeah. When I was mentioning the sleeves, I was waiting for you to kind of. But
I can tell you guys, I have made tens of cents.
That's tens of cents you did not have. So
correct.
You buy yourself, buddy.
Let's see. The other comments we showed already. Alex is showing the heat, apparently.
Yeah. Art's my guy. He's my hype man out there. Yep. So
yeah, the last
Art, by the way.
The last one you showed, Alex, with the knight on the front, I forget the name. I know those album covers. That was a hard one. I still haven't quite got into that one yet. I'm still trying. But
yeah. Now, I will say, so the Romantic Warrior from Return to Forever is great. I actually personally think I like Where Have I Known You Before, which is the one that came before it, a touch more. To me, Return to Forever is great for a number of reasons, but because of their rhythm section, because of Lenny White on drums, and because of Stanley Clarke on bass, they brought the funk. And so to me, they were like the funky sort of side, a lot of the fusion stuff. And that's what I loved about them, is I'd be just sitting there Saturday night on a couch, just bobbing my head. Oh my God. I mean, just killer. So yeah, I mean, that stuff's great. But I will say, I think the first two Return to Forever records do have a vocalist, and I'm not huge on, it's got Flora Plume, not huge on jazz vocalists in that sort of setting, but sorry to interrupt. Yes, but yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
What do you got to show for us there, John?
Yeah, I was kind of thinking, like I was talking about with Lou Donaldson. What I like about him, he's not just your standard jazz. There's a hard bop feel to him, but there's more of like an R&B ish feel on this, because he brings in those congas, and they're very. This is the first album I picked up by him. It was Blue Note, and this was a cool picture, so I was like, must buy. Yep. So I grabbed it, but that was the first thing I noticed was these congas going in there. I'm like, what the freak is this? That's not jazz, That was like my first introduction to other instruments besides bass, drums, trumpet, sax. All of a sudden you have these doop, 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 doop kind of thing going in the background. I'm like, well, you're allowed to do that, I guess. So I guess this would be a sort of a subgenre because it's not your traditional jazz. It's like what you're talking about, Alex, with adding the guitar flavor to it. You're adding that conga feel, that percussion feel to the jazz, and it goes into a whole nother feel of jazz. So this definitely one that I recommend. And I noticed that with his other stuff too. I've picked up probably 4 or 5 other Lou Donaldson, and he likes that sound. So it's kind of cool. You can go for that Miles hard bop traditional jazz sound, or you can go into these different areas of jazz. So I think there's kind of an area of jazz for everybody. You just got to kind of find yours.
And Lou, I think too, what he was great at was he was one of those artists that I think going into like the early to mid 70s, like took a lot of that, and like I was just talking about like the funky stuff. I mean, I don't know. Do you have everything I play as funky?
No, I don't.
Because that is like,
yeah,
it's like latter period, whatever you want to call it, but like that type of stuff is so good and so modern sounding and so accessible.
Yeah, so I do like that when you start kind of blurring the edges a little bit, kind of expanding out and getting different sounds and feels. So, so that was my first one, my Lou Donaldson.
All right. I'm going to make myself big now. I don't have any jazz because
that's okay. We're over jazz.
So. That was a coincidence, yeah.
Put the people out of their misery.
Right.
As John and I were talking last night when he was out for a walk, I'm not a jazz fan, and I don't have any inclination to get into jazz. It just doesn't interest me. It's that simple. I've heard a lot of jazz. My dad listened to a lot of jazz when I was a kid, so I was around it. Just doesn't appeal to me. So, and that's fine. Whatever floats your boat. But I also said to John something else that I'm not into is blues. So what am I going to show?
There you
go. Show a little bit of blues tonight. I've never shown before. I have a small handful of blues records, and specifically British blues. So I'm going to start with, I think, kind of one of the albums that kind of really started, I think. I'm not educated enough to be certain on that, but John Mayall and the Blues Breakers with Eric Clapton. I mean, early 63, 62, something like that. Loud electric blues. Yes. As Emma says, Beano, because this is also called the Beano album because Clapton is reading Beano, which was a British comic strip back in the day, and apparently he was doing that because he wanted to be uncooperative at the photo shoot. So
he read that too. I was rereading the autobiography of Clapton, and he read that as a kid too, as a child.
Yeah. So, this was an album I heard a lot as a kid because also my dad was into a lot of blues. So I always liked this, and this is a little different Clapton sound than what most folks are used to. As a guitar guy, I notice it because this is him playing a Les Paul through a Marshall Bluesbreaker amp, and that's a very different sound than the Stratocaster, which he played for the majority of his career. So it's a early step in the tonal voyage that is Eric Clapton's career. But this was sort of where I started, and so then I would go to this album from late 60s, the original Fleetwood Mac self-titled. Now, on this cover here, this gentleman is John McVie, who is the Mac in Fleetwood Mac. And originally, Mick Fleetwood of the founding drummer and member of Fleetwood Mac, was originally in John Mayall's Blues Breakers, but was fired. So if I remember how the story goes, Mick Fleetwood and John McVie had some studio time that John Mayall had given them. So they had recorded a few songs just farting around in the studio. And Peter Green heard them and said, holy smokes, let's start a band. I'm oversimplifying, but that's essentially how that happened. So the original Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac was an offshoot of John Mayall's Blues Breakers. This didn't do squat back in the day when it was first released, but I think it's fairly fairly highly regarded nowadays. But if you want to take that sort of Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac blues to another level, Fleetwood Mac Blues Jam in Chicago is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Alex is nodding. You've heard this before, Alex?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's them playing with a bunch of the Chicago blues guys. So it's kind of a fusion of American blues and British blues, and it's awesome. It's awesome. And I'm going to add one more into the mix here, and this is related to those bands too. This is another British blues band called Chicken Shack. Mm. This is their album called 40 Blue Fingers, Freshly Packed and Ready to Serve. There's a couple different covers of this, but there's a woman right there whose name is Christine Perfect, would later become Christine McVie from Fleetwood Mac and John Mayall and the Blues Breakers. She married John, and she joined Fleetwood Mac. So these four albums, obviously kind of tie together, but I like this Chicken Shack album, and they have another one after Christine left that's called Imagination Lady, which I do own as well. That's actually my favorite of the Chicken Shack records. But that's kind of, I don't have a ton of blues, but I kind of like that 60s British blues because it led to some bands that I really, really love.
Yeah.
So, what are we saying here? Yes, Peter Green. What an amazing guy. I love that early Fleetwood Mac stuff.
Now I'll say shameless plug for Emma over there at 8 Vinyl Low, who is like the British blues queen. Like she was probably over there listening to you talk, Rob, and like getting like bothered by it. So
she was probably going, this guy doesn't have a fucking clue what he's talking about. And compared to you, Emma, I absolutely do not.
No, so. Yeah, but she was like, it's her language, man. So
yeah, I know. Let's see. John says, wasn't also the name he gave to the Les Paul he used on that record? I don't know, but I know it was the name of a song, but I don't know. It could very well have been. Dang, I did some serious homework. No, it's just kind of stuff that I picked up by osmosis over the years. I don't know how true my facts are there. I think the gist of the story is roughly accurate. So
that's all that matters.
Yeah. The 50,000 elevation snapshot is somewhat sufficient. So Alex, what do you got for us next?
I just want to point out, John, this is just the picture of John just squatting in this corner right now. I can't tell if he's grabbing a record, going to the bathroom. It could be any number of things. Okay, sir.
Oh boy.
Okay, sir. All right. Well, shameless. Well, I don't know if it's.
I need a fart sound effect or something.
This is a video that I'll have upcoming here in the next couple of days when I feel educated enough to actually do it. But the genre that I'm going to talk about is power pop. Love power pop. Love all eras of it. Just love it. Which is funny. I think it's worth mentioning that, power pop is like the antithesis of the shit that people probably associate with me, right? Like, I'm into the big, conceptual, complex, self-indulgent, progressive rock stuff. And
you're the 17-minute orchestras about dragons.
Sir, I am a 17-minute orchestra about a dragon. Like, and so, I just, I shift on that. But, okay, like so many other things in this world, in this musical world, right? Like, it all goes back to the Beatles. But I will say too, really, truthfully, I mean, nothing really begins at anything. It always just takes from whatever came before it, right? But for power pop at least, a lot of people are going to cite yes, the Beatles, obviously, but really as a whole, the whole British invasion type of thing.
Sure.
And because to me, and I'm sure there are some more academic definitions out there of what power pop is and what it isn't, but I'm not really into that sort of stuff. But to me, it's like this idea of, okay, power and pop. What if we married these genres of these incredible vocal harmonies, these great melodies, these kind of sugary, poppy, songs, but then threw an actual, distorted guitar behind it, right? We put in a power chord, right? And I think that you could, before the Beatles, you could probably draw back to the Kinks with "You Really Got Me" and that type of stuff, right? And what that became. But just for the sake of argument, like anything else, you're talking British invasion type stuff, and you're talking the Beatles, you're talking the Kinks, and really, to me, it's those early Who records. I mean, you listen to those early Who records, My Generation, and that kind of stuff. Like, I mean, that is sort of the blueprint for what would come before it. But for the records I'm going to show, it's a combination of the really obvious ones and maybe some non-obvious ones. But to me, y'all know I've showed this band 100 times, Rob. I'm going to show them 100 more because they can do no wrong for me. But to me, I think it's interesting talking about power pop and geography, right? Because it really did begin with British invasion type stuff. And so therefore, I guess it kind of makes sense that maybe one of the earliest, what we knew that defined power pop, of course, was a British band. And of course, it was a British band. The first one signed to Apple Records. You know where I'm going with it. And that's
I do.
You knew it.
Yeah.
Actually, I show this record because this is kind of their masterpiece. But really, it probably started more with this. And there's a reason I'm showing this one. This is No Dice, I think 1970. I show this as the first one, not their debut, because this is what brought in Joey Molland, which was kind of the rock and roll guy in the band, right? It was kind of more singer-songwriter stuff, and then Joey Molland came in as the guitar player and started adding some crunch to it and added the power to the pop. But again, just incredible songwriting, short-ish songs, great melody. We got so many singers. Hey, Dan, good to see you, my brother. Everybody's singing, everybody's writing, just incredibly, just beautiful songs, all the different stuff. Now, I will say, too, to Trevor's point, like so many other things in rock and roll history, apparently power pop was termed by Pete Townsend. He was the guy that defined it, gave it the term. He was the guy that said, this is power pop, which, it's Pete Townsend, right? Like, who's going to argue with that? And so to me, we're talking 1970, 1971 in the UK here with this type of stuff. I won't say too much more about the UK just because I'm showing another genre that I think is like kind of like the power pop cousin, and that'll be the next one. But let's jump over to, the States and kind of what was going on there, right? There was a lot of stuff going on in the States, but specifically, bands like the Raspberries, right? We just lost our Eric Carmen a couple weeks ago. Huge. I mean, they were bigger in the States, the Raspberries were, than Badfinger was for a number of reasons. But really, that continues on through the early to mid-'70s. And then in the mid-'70s, you sort of enter this interesting phase because with power pop, it's like, okay, yeah, you have this pop stuff. Again, the antithesis of the overly indulgent, complex, conceptual type stuff going on. These 2-3 minute, 4-song, great, rock and roll songs. But then you also see, 1000%. I mean, I'd say like the best song ever written to me is Waterloo Sunset, which, I mean, that to me is just like absolute, just, cream of the crop. But, interesting when you get to your early mid-'70s, or I'm sorry, mid to late 70s now, you're kind of bringing in some punk influences, right? And then with punk, punk didn't last that long. When people say like, what was punk? You're talking like 3 years there. And then you're talking about post-punk, and you're talking about new wave. And then there's some crossover with new wave and power pop and all those different things. But to me, I wanted to show a band that is not talked about enough, but to me, defines the genre. This to me is like when you're talking mid to late 70s power pop, that absolutely defines the genre. Band out of San Francisco, I believe. And that is the Rubinoos. This is back to the drawing board with this. This was their second record from 1979. This is like, this feels like the Raspberries, but in the late 70s. Absolutely incredible. I pulled this one. Their debut is amazing too. The reason I pulled this one is because it kind of has a funny story with it. The second track on here is a track called I Want to Be Your Boyfriend, which just so happens to have essentially the identical melodic line as "Hey, hey, you, I don't like your boyfriend" by Canadian legend Avril Lavigne.
Legend.
Let's not use the term legend.
Well, so
Okay.
interesting though. If you've ever heard the song back to back, again, this is "I Want to Be Your Boyfriend." I think hers was "I Don't Like Your Boyfriend" or whatever it is, or "I Don't Like Your Girlfriend."
It's just called Boyfriend.
Okay. And it's so funny because when you hear this, you're like, oh, that's where they got the song from. Now,
Yeah.
I don't know if they settled out of court. I don't know what actually happened. There was a whole court
There
battle.
was litigation. I don't know what the deal was, though.
Yeah, there was litigation there. Not sure what happened. They also just did a, they were doing some incredible, like, Shondell covers and all that kind of stuff later. But to me, there's a lot of the obvious choices, right? You have your Cheap Trick, that's amazing. Raspberry is amazing. There are so many great power pop bands out there. I rarely see people talking about the Rubinoos. And I freaking love this band. And again, purely represents everything from power pop in the late 70s. Let's jump up a decade here just for fun. This is a 90s band that put out 2 albums. They were 2 and done. Again, because what does power pop look like in the 90s? Interesting, because then in the 90s, similar to kind of that like 80s period where you had like that punk influence and the post-punk influence, the 90s you had sort of the alternative influence, right? I mean, coming out of the 80s, you had like the REM stuff going on. And then sort of, what became pop punk, you know what I mean? Like, and whether that falls into the power pop range or whatever that is. But when you're talking early 90s and just one of the greatest and sort of complete epitomization of the genre, you absolutely have to talk about Jellyfish. I think one of those bands that has sort of blown up recently, sort of like everybody's talking about them now, but at the time, how popular were they? They put out 2 albums. They put out this and Spilt Milk in the early 90s, and they're absolutely just perfection of the genre. It's incredible harmonies, incredible songwriting, ear candy for days. The musicianship's just incredible. This is one of my, just selfishly, while we're here, let me pimp this out. One of my prized possessions, this is an original from, I think, 90 or 91 promotional copy. And so an absolute banger in the collection for all the people out there looking for bangers. But Jellyfish, it's amazing. If you've never listened to Jellyfish, stream it. They're both out there. Absolutely incredible. There's a bunch of offshoots of the band, Licorice Quartet, some of the other stuff, but absolutely amazing. And then
I have an Avril Lavigne update for you.
Oh, interesting. Oh, go ahead.
2008, she settled out of court. It was a confidential settlement. She issued a statement where she says she's never heard the song before. And her manager said he consulted a musicologist who found no similarities between the 2 songs. Yeah, okay.
So, Rob, you've heard the song. You've heard her song, I'm sure.
I've heard both of them, yeah.
You've heard, come on.
They're the same song.
I would say that they are closer together than like the whole Spirit Taurus thing and Stairway to Heaven thing.
Oh, yeah,
and
absolutely.
Those are pretty close. But this is like,
yeah, they're eerily similar.
Eerily.
Yes.
And then fast forward to today, it's funny. You got these power pop that we're talking about mid 60s that this sort of came. I felt that there's been like a resurgence of power pop. Specifically band I'll call out, from New York, is the Midnight Callers. They made such a huge sort of noise in the greater vinyl community. I know Matthew Street had been sending out a bunch of stuff and really been kind of leading the way on the Midnight Callers. Of course, Midnight Caller, which is a reference to Badfinger. Midnight Caller, one of Badfinger's greatest songs, one of my favorites, amazing. But to me, the band that has meant so much to me in 2023 and 2024, and they got a new record coming out here in a couple months. I've talked about them before, but that's the Lemon Twigs. Lemon Twigs are 2 brothers out of Long Island. This is music from 2023, 2024 that sounds like it is from 1965. I mean, you're talking, or 1965 to 1973. Beach Boys, Raspberries, a little bit of Wings in there. Incredible. So if you're kind of grew up on the Raspberries and all that kind of stuff and you want something modern, Lemon Twigs are out of this world. This is their most recent. Everything Harmony came out last year, but they do have another record coming out here in May. Incredible. Absolutely love them. Got a chance to see them last year, and I have tickets to see them on May 18th again this year. They blow my freaking mind. Amazing stuff. Great modern day power pop. And I yield my time.
So
my time. We're in Congress now.
speaking of power pop, I pulled this because this is one of the. I'm going to make myself big here for just a second. You're going to like this, Alex.
Hell yeah.
This is one of the best power pop records I've ever had. They're a local Ontario band.
Ooh.
I'm friends with the drummer. I've known him for years.
Naturally.
So they signed it for me. But I'll send you the link. It's a band called Royal Castles. You will fucking love it. It's got that sort of 60s guitar garage rock power pop kind of sound. It's one of the best records I've heard in years. I think you'll dig it. I'll send you a link for it.
Man, I got in there. Ontario, you said they're up by you?
Yeah, they're in the city that I live in, actually.
Oh, love it.
Yeah.
We don't say that city, but I know where it's at.
I know. We'll keep that ambiguous. All right, John, what do you got? Oh,
Well,
you want me to add something here. Hold on. There we go.
Yeah, well, I brought this up because I have the CD, but I don't have the album. So I was thinking about subgenres, but if you look at a band like Los Lobos,
Oh yeah,
they're Chicano rock, roots rock, Latin rock, Tex-Mex, country rock, Americana, Heartland rock, and cowpunk. I don't know what cowpunk is. Do you know?
Cowpunk? That's a hell of a genre.
I don't know what cowpunk is. So what I love about their album, especially this one, it's kind of like its own little genres within itself. You have good, just basic rock with acoustic based, but then you go into these songs that are sung in Spanish with traditional sound to them, yet with a different bluesy feel to them. So that's why I wanted to bring this one up. You go from Done Gone Blue to, I'm not going to pronounce the Spanish titles, but these are completely in Spanish. And then you do this song here called Tony and Maria, which is just a great love song of a man who has come from Mexico to the States, I'm assuming California or Texas, and tries to establish a place, and he misses his wife, so his wife comes and visits and stays. Now they're missing their children, so it's a really heartfelt song. But it mixed so much in their music, and throughout their whole career, they've mixed that Latin flavor, but you have I think there's a lot of Americana in them, and I always get them confused. I always want to say they're an LA band, but I think they're a Texas band. I can't remember where they're based out of. But there's so much going on in their music. The other one I was going to bring up, one we were talking about, you can get rid of that one. I just wanted to pull it up because I don't have the album yet. I can't find that on vinyl. I just ordered it off of Amazon to get the CD. I've been looking for it for years. But if you haven't checked out that Good Morning Aslan, check that bad boy out. Los
Lobos is from LA.
It is LA. Okay.
Yeah.
So we've been talking about this one, and I wanted to bring this up. I'm staying on the subgenres within an album.
Rob, do you know that record?
Yeah, I may have heard of it before.
Maybe you can't see it because it's shiny. Hold on, let me help you a little bit. There you go.
I may have heard of that one. Yes.
Yeah, this is a guy called Bono, right? Oh no, that's Bono. There's the Edge. There we go.
Right.
Something going on there. So we've had some conversation about this album, but if you just you go through the titles of the songs and what they did into subcategories just off of this album, so Helter Skelter, Beatles, where do you put that? Is that just rock? So it's a Beatles. Is this power pop?
You could argue, pop, right? You could argue Helter Skelter was the first metal song made.
Okay. Right. Okay.
Sure.
And then you go right from there to Van Diemen's Land.
Right.
Where the hell does that even fit? Right. Traditional Irish, right? Sort of song.
Yeah, probably.
Okay. So we've already gone.
Or maybe it's a folk song.
Yeah. And now we're going to Radio Friendly Desire, which is not a typical pop song. Desire is acoustic based, I would say. A lot of right.
Yep.
So those three songs right there, completely different genres, just on their own. And then Hawk Moon 269. What do we add? There's a little bit of rock in there, like that. Where do you put that song? Right? There's so much going on in this album. I was sitting there trying to look at just All Along the Watchtower's next. So they're sort of doing the Jimi Hendrix version of the Dylan song.
Yep.
Yes. Right. And then
John, can I interrupt really quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to say, Rob, not to get you, feeling good about yourself or anything, but I what's so funny with All Along the Watchtower and Helter Skelter, I bet you there are so many people, U2 haters, Bono haters, that would love nothing more than to rip those apart, and they freaking can't. They fucking can't, man. They fucking can't.
This was U2 saying we know how to rock, and I wish there was more U2 of this U2. You know, they showed it right here, and then they went completely away from it. You could say Octung Baby had some rock and like a modern, because I remember when that came out, like maybe a little psychedelic feel for the 90s, but it wasn't, you know.
Yeah.
But this just showed that we could get raw. We could just have their instruments and just rely on our vocals and the raw instruments and do it, right? So it's just all over the place. I mean, Pride in the Name of Love, we talked about that. So now we're going to bring in a gospel choir, and boom, you know, it's just.
And then you've got BB King, and that gets you sort of the blues influence.
So where does Angel of Harlem fall? I mean, Angel of Harlem is an R&B song, right?
Right.
Okay, with the horns and everything going on in there.
And I think what you're talking about here is another reason why this album is not well liked, because as I said when we were talking last night, it's kind of that album has kind of an identity crisis. It's kind of all over the place.
Right.
But it is in a fantastic way as far as
they found a way to grab all these genres and make it work.
Yes.
For me,
me too.
In my ears, this just completely freaking worked.
Yep.
How they even came up with this quickly to put these songs together, how it came together. This is like the magic of like a Rumors or whatever.
Yes.
Just lightning strikes and boom, you have it.
Agreed.
So, and then you go through all of that, even in Bullet the Blue Sky, which is just crazy,
Yep.
And then you end it with All I Want Is You, which is a pop song.
Right.
You know, not even a pop song. How do you define that song? It's simplistic. It's four
power ballad, maybe. I don't know.
But then the orchestra comes in, and all this stuff happening here. So if you want a bunch of subgenres in one album, there
you go.
There it is.
Bravo.
And it's interesting because it's live, but then there's this Hollywood appeal to it, like the studio appeal. So it's interesting. So yeah, that one really had me thinking about that. And then the only other two I was going to bring up were, Neil Young's all over the place. But with these two albums, I really felt like he kind of went different places, especially with the Shocking Pinks. And I love this album. I know a lot of people are like, what the hell was Neil doing? But I freaking love this. Kind of Fond of Wanda. I mean, that's a fun song. But it's 50s rockabilly sort of sound. It's a fun song. It's a fun album, all the way through. So he does that, but then he turns around not long after and does this, with the Blue Notes. And this is, it has the blues feel to it, a lot of atmosphere to it, but a lot of horns in there that are really drive it. So it's not as, kind of raw as like a Harvest or whatever. It's got a different feel to it. But, Neil's all over the place with his, crossing the lines on genres. I mean, Harvest, could you call that a country album if you didn't know it was Neil Young? Could that be?
I don't know.
Where would that fall? I mean, again, that's kind of crosses genres in that album.
I mean, for me, it falls squarely in the Canadiana category because that is a thing here, but it doesn't mean anything anywhere else.
Well, and it's also funny too because you mentioned Harvest as like a country album. I feel like people could make that argument when they heard it. And then he came out with, 6 years later with Comes a Time. And you're like, oh, that's a country album.
Yeah,
that's Neil Young's country album.
Yeah, right.
Before I forget, Rob, write this down. John brings up a good point here. Show idea, musical chameleons.
Yeah, that is a good one. Yeah, how many people cross that? Like Tom Waits, I mean, would be a perfect one.
Oh God, so many. Yeah.
From his first album to his most recent, is that the same guy?
I'm calling dibs on Taylor Swift already. Sorry, Alice.
You would have to, Rob.
Right?
Now, would you say Tom Waits has kind of come back to the original, away from the gruffy voice? Because he kind of, what was the Train song that Rod Stewart did? Was it Downbound Train? No, that was Springsteen. I don't know. He's gotten back to the original roots a little bit and away from that gruffy voice that he had for a while and experimental. So he's kind of come around. full circle, but that guy's a contradiction of ideas. You know, talking about bringing in poets and, you know, what's the I always forget the poet's name that he worked with on Dark Rider or Black Rider.
I'm not sure.
That worked with Kurt Cobain. It's gonna drive me crazy. But anyway, yeah, that's a good category of artists that cross all the way through there. I hate to say it, but Billy Joel's all over that, man. He's all over the place. So you better have me up for that episode.
All right. We'll reserve it for you.
There you go. All right, so that's what I have.
All right. I get caught up on a few comments here. I got to go back because I missed a few. Richard's saying he's never heard of the Rubinoos.
That surprised me, Richard, but you would love. I mean, that is power pop as you can get in that time period for sure.
Bob says the Raspberries made 4 albums, then broke up.
Sure did.
Dan, also Blue Ash, the DVs, Marshall Crenshaw Shoes, Artful Dodger, etc.
So many great power pop bands, and I should have pulled Blue Ash. They're up here out of Ohio. They're an Ohio band. Kind of hard to find that first record, but yeah, they're awesome.
John says, I Want to Be Your Boyfriend is also a great song by the Ramones.
Yes.
Train Ride by Earthquake is incredible power pop. I don't know that.
Hmm.
I don't know that one.
The song or the band, yeah.
Richard likes your jellyfish.
That could be taken in many ways, yeah.
Pop punk, yeah, there's some great pop punk records out there for sure.
Yeah.
Dan saying he hoped the Rubinoos get a few bucks. They never got rich, but they're still together.
That's the when people settle confidentially out of court, hopefully that means that someone got paid.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
Grip the Weeds are insanely good. You know them?
The Grip Weeds. I don't know them. Are they Canadian, Rob?
I've never heard of them.
Mm-mm.
You never know with Dan.
You never.
That could be the name of his landscaping company.
It could be. Trevor saying an amazing power pop song is Mistake. I like that. Mistake by the Detroit band The English.
Yes.
We can't say that word on YouTube because we'll get in trouble. Beautiful Day rocks pretty hard. I don't know. I mean, they have some harder rocking songs. Vertigo is
very radio friendly. My emotions change on that song.
You want a harder rocking song, go with Vertigo or Get on Your Boots. I'm not saying those are good songs, but they got a crunchier guitar and Yeah. But yeah, Beautiful Day is a great song for sure.
Yeah.
What about Neil's album Trans?
That was so weird. I don't even know it's been years since I've listened to that one too. But I didn't know what to think of it when I first heard it. I think he was trying to get out of some contracts too. That was during that whole time. Because wasn't that during this time too with this one too? He was,
Well, and that was the whole
the record company.
The whole joke with the Neil thing was like, he got signed to Geffen, and he was like, "Oh, let me just do what I want to do," and they were like, "We don't want you to do that."
Yeah, have you not been watching my career? Yeah, it's that was interesting, but Trans was way out there.
All right, I'm up next. So I'm going to go with another genre that I surprised I had as many albums as I did. And this is a genre that sort of came about in the very, very late 80s, early 90s, and that's alt country.
Yeah.
And I think the band that really started alt country is Uncle Tupelo. They did, I think, 3 studio albums and a live album, and then they broke up, and they broke up into 2 different bands. One segment of Uncle Tupelo went on to form Wilco, and the other went on to form Son Volt. And both are very good bands in their own right. I don't own any Son Volt. I do have some Wilco. And I like the early Wilco, but then Jeff got a little bit weird in my mind. But I think Uncle Tupelo is better than both of those bands combined. This is their album No Depression from 1990. And the other one that is really good is Anodyne. I've got that one as well. These are just fantastic alt country. And alt country is kind of, it's rock and country, but it's not country rock. I know that probably doesn't make any sense, but it's kind of like country and rock with maybe a tinge of alternative or punk kind of mixed in, if that maybe makes sense. You
Bringing
know,
that slide steel guitar.
yeah, it's got some grit to it, I think.
Yeah.
So I recommend both Anodyne and No Depression from Uncle Tupelo. If you want to start down the alt country route, that's the way to go. These two records are absolutely phenomenal. So Uncle Tupelo is where I start, and then I go to a band out of Texas that's still around, still cranking out albums.
And Rob, hold on before you show it. And if I know, they just announced a show here in Columbus, Ohio.
Did they?
They did. Go ahead.
The old 97s.
Yep.
You knew I was going there. I love these guys. So this was their first one, Hitchhike to Rome, which came out in 1994. This is fronted by a guy named Rhett Miller, who I think is wickedly talented, great stage presence, great singer, great songwriter. The album they did after this, which was called Too Far to Care, that album is probably the best of their catalog. But I show this one because I don't know that I've ever shown it before. I think Old 97s have about a dozen records under their belt at this point in time in 30 years. So, and they're all good. Not a bad one in the lot. Too Far to Care, I think, is the best one. And then I like Hitchhike to Rome. So, yeah, Old 97s from Texas. Then I'm going to go to kind of a 1 degree of separation from Uncle Tupelo to a Chicago band, which is not Uncle Tupelo and not Wilco, but related to both of them. A lesser-known Chicago band called Freakwater. They are another sort of alt-country band. Again, it's two women are the principal singer-songwriters, a couple guys in the band. One of them, this gentleman right here, whose name is Bob Egan, who would go on to join Wilco, and then would join Blue Rodeo, and then would visit me in my basement many times to record videos for my YouTube channel. And he's in the Canadian Music Hall of Fame. That's not why I show this. I show this. I've had this record before I was friends with Bob. This is, again, that same sort of gritty, countrified rock, but this is a little mellower than Old 97s, but it's still in that that vein of alternative country music. And I'm going to round it out with a band I've talked about a lot. And they traveled the States very frequently, but they're from Toronto. A band called the Sadies. They're sort of, like Cosmic Cowboys, but they play anything. And they've done blues albums. They've done folk albums. They've collaborated with other people. I know Mazzy's a big fan of these guys. He talks about them a lot. I have seen them countless times. I've had the pleasure of seeing these guys in a bar where there was only 12 people there. This was years ago. These guys have been around 30 years, but absolutely incredible guitar players. And they are really probably the best alt country band I've ever heard. They're fantastic. Unfortunately, it's two brothers. So you've got Dallas Good here and his brother Travis. Unfortunately, Dallas died very unexpectedly last year. So they've continued on as a trio and done quite well. But awesome electric guitar, awesome alt country, and a bunch of other stuff. But these guys are bloody phenomenal. Alt country. That's where I would start.
That's amazing, Rob, because I mean, granted, that is not a subgenre that I am familiar with. What's so interesting to me though is I like Wilco. Like everything I've heard from Wilco, I have liked.
Sure.
And when I hear them, I do not associate them at all with
Sky Blue Sky.
With country, quote unquote.
Yes.
And so that leads me to want to be really interested in obviously Sunvolt and Tupelo, Uncle Tupelo, also Tupelo Honey, great band. These other, because I'm like, when I hear Wilco, I don't hear, I hear just more like kind of like, indie singer-songwriter-y type stuff, right?
Tupelo and Wilco do not sound the same. The first, and John could answer this better than I can because he just ranked the first 3 Wilco albums, but their first album was a little more countrified than anything that they put out later. I mean, they transitioned into a rock band, and you like a lot of the Wilco stuff because it does get a little bit more abstract, a little,
after the third, and
a little more cosmic,
right.
Yes, absolutely. So, you would not think Wilco and country, but I mean, half of that Uncle Tupelo record is Jeff Tweedy. He wrote half the songs and he sings them. So you will recognize it. It sounds like Jeff Tweedy doing old country. So it's interesting. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
I sort of lose Wilco after about Yankee Hotel Foxtrot. That's kind of, and even that's a bit of, I don't actually have Sky Blue Sky that John has there on vinyl. I have it on CD.
That was a comeback almost to their early.
John, stuff. Is that the one they're doing like a big expanded edition for Record Store Day?
Oh, I don't know.
No, that's
I don't think so because I would have been all over that.
I can't remember. It's not that. I can't remember which one.
They're doing a Wilco expanded thing for Record Store Day. I'm not sure which record it is. I thought it was that, but I could be wrong.
Yeah.
And they've done several. They did a big expanded Yankee Hotel Foxtrot a few years ago.
I couldn't get into that one that much. Definitely like their second, third albums.
The stuff they did with Billy Bragg is amazing.
Yeah, there was that one song off of AM though. It's Just That Simple, and it was sung by the bass player. God, it sounds like the band. I mean,
yes,
that it's going to go out of tune. Not great, but wow, cool voice.
It sounds like Rick Danko.
Yeah. Oh man, it's so. I'm like, why don't that guy needs to sing more? I love that voice. That's so good.
Speaking of Rick Danko, so I was traveling recently when I was down there hanging out with Sam, and I watched again. It's probably my second time watching Once We're Brothers. The it is a great documentary. It is a great documentary, and also I can fully understand people's issues with it in regards to sort of how. I mean, one side, it's really not it's not a documentary about the band. It's a documentary about Robbie Robertson.
Correct.
Interpretation of the band, yeah.
And it's just so funny, but I was joking actually with Sam because I love the band. Sam's a big fan of the band, and I couldn't help but just laugh after like watching it the second time. How it's sort of like put together like a Robbie Robertson audiobook,
Yeah.
Where it's like Levon Helm was my best friend. I would take a bullet for Levon.
And here's what's interesting about
and it's like,
gonna get
Jesus, Rob. Like we can see, I can rest your soul, but I'm like, sir.
Go
ahead, Rob.
Robertson was an asshole.
Yes.
And I can say that with. I've been told because I know people that have worked with Garth Hudson. I know a few people that have worked with Garth Hudson. Garth Hudson's still alive. Guy. He's the only guy left.
And the oldest.
And the oldest, which is hilarious. But after, in the 80s and 90s, Robertson wanted nothing to do with the band. Absolutely nothing. And would shit on everything that they did and distance himself from them and didn't give a shit. And then somewhere around about probably the mid-2000s, he realized that he could make a shit ton of money if he embraced that legacy. And if he did, he could also control the narrative. And that is exactly what he did. And I don't know how that shook out financially with all the other guys. But at the end of the day, we did get some very good quality represses and some audiophile stuff and some like the Academy of Sound box set. We got some great stuff because Robertson got involved. But it's just funny that for the better part of 20 plus years, he didn't give a shit about those guys. He would have, if they were on fire, he wouldn't have pissed on them to put them out. But then as they start dying and, he starts getting a little long in the tooth, he says, I gotta.
Well,
I gotta rewrite history a little bit here.
And that was my thing. Not to go on, a band tangent here, but it was like my thing with it was interesting, Robbie. You're saying all these things after. That's amazing, though. That's great, man.
I've not met him. This was purchased, but
it's like you're saying all this stuff when those people cannot defend, not only defend themselves, but they cannot push back.
Yeah.
yes.
I mean, I hate to do this, but it's like, he talks in that documentary about how he went to see Levon and held his hand as he died. And I'm like, who's going to tell you that didn't happen?
Levon probably went, "What the fuck are you doing?"
Yeah, he probably woke his Arkansas ass up and told him to fuck off, right? Yeah.
Yes.
But it's interesting. I mean, that whole story is just wild and crazy. And I think the bigger thing is that how songwriting royalties work. I mean, that's a hell of a conversation, right? Because Robbie absolutely wrote all the songs. Nobody doubts that he wrote these things.
Right.
But the big issue with Levon and others too, but mostly Levon, is he's like, yeah, but I arranged a lot of these.
Yes.
And unfortunately, arranging don't get you money. You know what I mean? That don't mean shit.
Right.
It does not mean a thing. Now, should it? Probably.
You got Liberty DeVito some money because originally Only the Good Die Young was a reggae song, and Liberty DeVito said no, it's bullshit. And they changed it to what it was, and he went back and got money for that later. So
yeah, it's how do you prove what contribution an arranger makes? That's the tough thing, right?
You can't. Yeah,
you can't. So it's shitty. I regret that I never got to see anybody from the band. My parents actually saw the band when they were still the Hawks, because they're actually from Stratford, Ontario, which is about 45 minutes from where I live, except for Levon, who's from Arkansas. But he came up here with Ronnie Hawkins, and they met the guys, and so
Levon and the Hawks for a while.
Yeah, exactly. So my parents saw them as the Hawks at a coffee shop at the university here in town before they were anybody. And Mom and Dad were like, yeah, there was like 30 people there.
Wow.
I know. Wow. Incredible.
And it's so, last thing I'll say on the whole band thing, it's just so fascinating to me that the collection of musicians that arguably defined the most American sound, to the point that you could argue they began the Americana thing.
Yeah. Neil Young.
4 motherfucking Canadians and 1 hick from Arkansas. I mean, it's like, I think about, I was actually joking with Sam about this, because my ongoing joke with Sam is that he has a Confederate flag in his living room. He doesn't. He does not, by the way. But I joke that. But I think about the song "The Night They Rode Old Dixie Down," and thinking that if Levon wrote that song, how much different of the fact that Robbie wrote that song, I'm like, oh, it's just some Canadian who grew up on a reservation.
Right.
He doesn't know. It's fine. But if Levon wrote that song, I'd be like, Levon, we got to talk.
Yeah.
We got to talk about the Civil War, my man.
Yeah.
What Sam may not have a Confederate flag hanging above his couch, but what you're not telling folks is he has a Dodge Neon painted orange, and he's got the Dukes of Hazzard flag on the roof.
You ring his doorbell and it's the dun.
And there's a great video that Sam shot of Alex climbing in the window of Sam's General Lee.
You got
None of it's true. Yeah.
You got to slide into it. Yeah.
All right, my turn.
Your turn, sir.
All right. Well, I said I had a video coming later, and I'll bring this in some way once I sort of get my thoughts sort of organized. But I really do. These are not the same. It's not the same as power pop, but I think there's the argument that this is the genre that is the cousin to power pop, and something that definitely had, I think, some American incarnations in a lot of different ways. But really, this was purely a British UK thing. And I am going to talk about glam rock. Yep. My favorite, probably, look, Bowie and Slade and Mott the Hoople and all this kind of stuff. But to me, the sound that really defined glam and the record that defined glam in so many ways was, of course, Mark Bolan and T-Rex with Electric Warrior. I mean, this was this idea of, we are going to do, we're going to wear heels, we're going to dress up, we're going to wear makeup, we're going to wear glitter, we're going to go all over the place, we're going to be androgynous. And what's interesting is that for every American and probably Canadian, what if you know that up there, but for everybody I've ever heard, the day everything changed for them was seeing the Beatles on Ed Sullivan, right? That was the day that everything changed. Every musician says, when I saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan, it changed everything. For a lot of Brits, what changed everything for them was seeing Mark Bolan and T-Rex on Top of the Pops. That was their moment of, I want to be that guy. That's the rock star for me. First of all, still to this day, I just think this is just one of the best covers ever. Just, you just know that's the Marshall Stack back there. Probably isn't, but it could be. But, Mark Bolan just represented such a rock star persona, but in a very different way than what we were accustomed to when it comes to rock stars, right? It wasn't this like hyper, masculine badass sort of thing. It was a guy in friggin' heels with a top hat,
Slash.
It's right. I mean, that's a lot of the takeaway there. So to me, I mean, again, there are so many great glam records, but I always will go back to Electric Warrior, and I love the Slider that came after it. I love Tanks. T-Rex used to be Tyrannosaurus Rex, in which they were more of kind of that British psychedelic folky stuff, So a lot of people point to this and they're like, "Oh, this was T-Rex's first." No, it was like their sixth or something. But yeah, I mean, such great stuff on here. Obviously, Jeepster was a big hit. Bang a Gong, Get It On was huge, right? I mean, that's still kind of like one of those classic songs, but there's so many great songs on here. And I just, T-Rex, I think for so many, especially people in the UK, this was Mark Bolan was the rock star. Tragic story of his death too, and sort of what happened. But glam, you're talking similar to punk in the way that you're talking such a small segment of years. You're talking basically 71 to 73, and that is glam, at least in the UK. Again, here in the States, you had a couple of different things going on. It leads into like arguably proto punk. You could say the New York Dolls were glam. You could say that. Lou Reed was glam, but he was only really glam for an album, that kind of stuff. But yeah, and obviously the Bowie stuff. This next band I'll show, this is the record celebrating 50 years this year, and I think totally gets, we just don't hear a lot of people talking about this band, but I think as some of these songs go and just their whole attitude and everything, and that's Sweet. This Desolation Boulevard, 1974. Man, Fox on the Run's on here. Ballroom Blitz, people, all these different things that people have heard a million times. On some of the other records, you had Action, which was later covered and is still played to this day by Def Leppard. There's your Def Leppard reference, Take a Shot. But, Sweet has an interesting story because they started off with like two songwriters that really wrote all their stuff. And then they're kind of like, it was like that bubblegum pop stuff. But the bubblegum pop is what makes glam sort of the cousin of the power pop, right? Thinking about songs like Fox on the Run or Little Willie, right? I mean, Little Willie really won't go home. What a great freaking song. What is this about? We don't know.
Who cares?
Yeah, who cares? It's a great song. So
right.
Sweet, don't talk about it enough. I saw, a comment here is that, the hair metal, the idea is from John Jones, the most recent one. Absolutely right. Hair metal, from the Poisons to all that kind of stuff. Yeah, like that was the late 80s incarnation of early 70s glam, like they were not the first people to do makeup and perms and long hair and and high-heeled shoes. They were absolutely not. It was just almost 20 years later in that way. And I'll say too, to bring it back today, I've talked about this band a while ago, but it's true again to show you that glam is still alive and well today. This was one of my favorite albums that came out last year, and a band from Sweden that just is absolutely killing it and really just is just paying their ode to that early 70s British glam stuff. And that's a band called The Velvet Insane. Richard, if you're out there watching, man, you got to listen to these guys. I think they've done 3 full-length records at this point. But after the Velvet, they're just you listen to this and you think you're back in 1972. It's wild. This is amazing stuff. Came out last year and blew me away. Amazing stuff. And just a genre I freaking love in all the ways, for all the reasons. So
I gotta check them out.
Glam is, you're right, alive and well. And one of my favorite bands is heavily, heavily, heavily influenced by Glam.
Absolutely. 1,000%. Yeah.
These guys are one of the best fucking bands out there as far as I'm concerned. Love them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And some good comments here. Sorry, Rob, not to.
Yeah, I'm way behind on comments.
I don't want to, be like.
I suck at my moderation duties this evening. Where are we here? We'll just go about here. Uncle Tupelo and Under Pressure was my intro to them. Really strong album. Yes. Dan, like Blue Rodeo is alt country. Well, stay tuned, Dan.
Oh boy.
Alt country, gritty rock that's not afraid. Yeah, there you go. Gritty rock that's not afraid to twang once in a while. Yes. Rhett's solo stuff is worth a listen. Yeah, I've got a couple of Rhett Miller solo CDs, so I agree with you on that. Check out Cadillac 3 for gritty country alt rock. Yes, I've heard them. I don't own anything by them, but yes, I agree. They are good. Trevor, yeah, I had to. Because I name dropped somebody from Freakwater. Dan says the Blue Shadows out of Vancouver in the 90s were an awesome twang and beatly country rock band. Well, Dan, since Trevor was on me about name dropping, I'm going to do it again. The Blue Shadows were fronted by a guy named Billy Cowsill. Billy Cowsill was one of the Cowsills, the Cowsill family that had those hits, Hair and The Rain, the Park, and other things. And they're who the Partridge Family was based on. So Billy Cowsill was kicked out of the Cowsills band by his father, who managed them, because he had a friendship with the guy that plays guitar for Stevie Nicks, and I can't remember his name, Waddy Wachtel.
Yeah.
And his dad didn't approve of Waddy, so kicked him out. He moved to Calgary and then ultimately Vancouver. And the Blue Shadows were an awesome, twangy country rock band. And where I'm going to name drop is Billy Cowsill's son, Del, is a friend of mine. I've known him for years. Because,
like a very small area. Rob seems to know just everybody. Like, it seems very small. It's a big country, but it seems very small when you're talking to Rob. Like, I just know everybody, or everybody lives near me. What's going on? You travel a lot, Rob. You meet a lot.
Yeah, it's funny because Del posted a picture a few weeks ago. He lives near Niagara Falls, and he was visiting with his uncle and his aunt who were in Niagara Falls to see him. His uncle is John Cowsill, who's the drummer for the Beach Boys, and his aunt is Vicky Peterson from the Bengals. And I'm just like, dude, you know how much I love the Bengals, but anyway.
It's not the Bengals. You can just be honest. It's not just the Bengals.
It's Susanna Hoffs.
Yeah. They can get rid of the rest of them. Just Suzanne Hoffs, yeah.
The Jayhawks were real good too. Yeah, I've got a couple Jayhawks records on CD, and I almost showed one of them.
Yeah, I have a hard time with them. I can't quite get into them. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of hit and miss. I like some of it and not some of the other stuff.
Yeah.
Zach and Carly are there. The Levon documentary, I Ain't In It For My Health, is a good watch, but sad. Yeah, it is good.
Yeah, that was like right at the end. Yeah.
Trevor's leaving. Great topic. Thanks, Trevor. Glad you're watching. You've probably already signed off. Is there a band currently as good as the band? Yeah, who knows? John says he's from Stratford, which is where the band is from. He took guitar lessons from a guy that played with Ronnie Hawkins. Holy smokes. Yes, it's the hometown of John Till of the Full Tilt Boogie Band who backed Janis Joplin. Yes, I knew that. When you talk glam, do not mention Gary Litter. He probably means Gary Glitter, unless Gary Litter's the guy that Cats shit on. I don't know.
He really doesn't like Gary Glitter, yeah.
Electric Warrior is is my all-time favorite album cover. Mark like wearing his boas too. We talked about that one. Desolation Boulevard is a great record. Is Kiss glam? Yeah, I guess they have to be, right?
Yeah. Oh, you're muted, Alex.
Thanks. Feel like a boomer over here. Yeah, back in the Kiss. Yeah, I mean they pulled all that stuff from
Yeah.
Bowie and T-Rex and all those guys. Now Dan makes a great point here. I mean I love Angel, especially that first record. That first Angel record from 75, 76 is incredible. But they were signed. Angel was signed to Casablanca to be sort of the other Kiss. Casablanca at the time was signing artists like Donna Summer, and it was not necessarily like a rock label. But man, that first Angel record absolutely smokes. It's glam. It's kind of hair metal-y. It's kind of proggy. Of course, it's got Greg Giuffria on there. That first Angel record absolutely smacks my ass in the best way. Thank you.
Is there a bad way? I mean, really, if we really think about it, is there a bad
Only
way?
from you, John.
Okay. I thought I was pretty good.
I don't want to hear any more about your weekend with Sam.
I used the back of the hand, not the front.
So many glam influence bands out there. Yes. Darkness, 100%. I'm going to sneeze, I think.
Get it?
Oh, no, it's gone away.
Don't hold it, man. You could hurt yourself.
I know. I tried to let it out, but it wouldn't go. John says he liked the Darkness until Justin hits those high falsettos. I can handle it for song, and then it grates on me. And I'm like, the higher he can sing, the better. Shatter Glass, my friend. Like I love it. Love everything about the Darkness. I've been a fan of those guys since day one.
Slade.
Justin
has an amazing YouTube channel, by the way, too. It's fantastic.
Oh, it's great. Slade was awesome. I love Slade. I could have pulled their stuff. I'm all in on Slade. And again, a lot of these bands, especially Slade. Slade was huge in the UK. Not so much in the US or probably in Canada either. I mean, but Slade was cranking out top 20. I mean, multiple top 20 hits every single month. Most times. And I want to say this to you, Rob. We haven't talked about this because I know everybody, Permission to Land, it's a classic, right? Everybody, but my entry point, of course, I knew, I believe in a thing called Love, right? That was all over the radio, all that kind of stuff. But my album into that, I had probably a record that I know better than 98% of records I own is One Way Ticket to Hell and Back.
Do you have that on vinyl?
Absolutely not.
That's the only one I don't have because it's crazy hard to find.
Yeah, I would own it 1,000%. I fell in love with that record when I was probably 17.
Me too.
And the whole thing opens with Justin snorting, a line. And I was like, sitting there, I was like, I don't know what this is. But that record, and of course, that was a Roy Thomas Baker production, right? I'm like, well, like the same guy that did Bohemian Rhapsody, Night of the Opera, is doing this. I guess it makes sense. I love that record to death. Let me tell you, to death.
Yep. I'm not plugged in. I'm unplugged.
Yeah,
White Twilly married Susan Cowsill. Yes, that's true. Billy was in another Vancouver band called the Blue Northern. I didn't know that. I hadn't heard of them. So I'll have to check that out. The first two Angel albums are superb.
It sure does.
One Way Ticket has knockers on it.
Right. Because Rob, was that the... Oh, my God. Knockers is great. I mean, Knockers, yeah. Hazel Eyes was amazing. Man.
Yep.
So good.
I love it.
I might love that tonight.
Love it. John, you are up.
Okay. So we're talking about like bands that go into a country area. How about country artists that kind of go to different areas? Like, today's country is not country to me. It's like pop music with a twang.
You're not going to show Garth Brooks is Chris Gaines, are you?
No.
Okay, good.
Yeah. So country music is not, country music anymore. But there are artists that I feel are country at heart, but they have a whole lot more to offer. I was going to grab it over there, but I have like Sturgill Simpson is a good example of this. Heavy country accent. And he's not, Keith Urban drives me nuts. The dude has an Australian accent and sings with a goddamn country twang. What the fuck is that?
But he's a good guitar player.
Is that like Poser City or what? It's like, I know what they want to hear. So, it's like, but that's not your voice. But
He landed Nicole Kidman, so hats off to
He
you,
did.
sir.
and he can play a killer guitar. He's a good guitar player, but that just throws me off. But like Sturgill Simpson has a true like thick old school country accent, but he goes into so many different areas. He'll go into R&B. He'll do orchestrations. He covered Nirvana on one of his albums, Something in the Way, I think he did. So yeah, it's just interesting when they kind of take that country twang and blend in other areas. So one guy that comes to mind is this Chris Stapleton. This is a little bit more polished album, but still a lot of good songs on here. But he's more of an R&B singer to me. I call him like the country Ray Charles because he sings with so much soul, but he has that little bit of that country twang to it. But yet, he'll throw horns in there. He'll throw so much more into the music where it's just not a country album. So I don't know what category you would really throw him in. I mean, he wears the big cowboy hat, but he's not just a cowboy. And then he plays a killer guitar. So, it's kind of interesting. I don't know where you would actually classify him. I think a lot of people like to stick him into the country category, but I think he's more than that. And then, so talking about U2 earlier, so the last song on Zooropa is The Wanderer, right, with Johnny Cash, which is so, I was like, what the hell's going on here?
Right.
It's that electronic album. It was probably the least electronic sound, but still not country.
Right.
Here comes Johnny Cash singing The Wanderer. Good country lyrics. I'd like to hear this song nice and acoustic based with just acoustic instruments.
Right.
And it was cool because Bono lets Johnny just sing and Bono backs him up, and it's a cool song.
Yes.
But I'm like, where do we put this? You
Right.
know, it's a cross. We're gonna meet somewhere in the middle and do this. So, and I wonder, is this, where it led to, Johnny Cash doing all these albums, all these Cash albums. So where do you put these? This is, to me, is like Bob Dylan territory. Is Johnny singing or is he speaking in some of these songs? And the production's so basic and quiet, you can't put it into a country category. Especially when he does like Hurt, 9 Inch Nails, or he does what, One, right? Didn't he do One by U2 on one of the albums?
I think so.
Own Personal Jesus. I mean, what the hell's going on here? So now you got true country. We're talking from the 50s country. Where do these albums go? Where do these fit in as far as that goes? I listen to each one of these albums, like it's just amazing. And you would think you'd get bored, right? Because it's pretty simplistic. But there's, what, 6 of them? 5 of them?
5 or 6, yeah.
Yeah, I think, because I'm missing. There's one that I can't find. Do you guys have any of these albums?
No, I don't.
Because I have everything but, I think, 5. 1, 2. Yeah, I think there's 5 of them. But I'm missing like 4. And I can't find that anywhere. All the other ones you can find. But yeah, it's just, it's really cool what Rick Rubin did here. To take Johnny, take him out of his comfort zone, and Johnny to do it, and then you make 5 or 6 albums out of it, and doing these songs and making them very heartfelt and emotional, like especially like Personal Jesus. I really like how he does that, and he does Bridge Over Troubled Waters. I mean, it's so where
it opened him up to a wider audience too. That there's people like I'm not interested in old school country, and he proved that. He's not just that. They're great.
Yeah. And this has a lot of artists on there too. Like I know the Heartbreakers are on here.
Yeah.
And Betty's on there. And
yeah.
So it was like, again, one of those just rare moments. Let's try it. It worked. It wasn't, I wouldn't say it's like it played on the radio like crazy, but people knew about these albums.
Well, I seem to remember I think there was a video for the 9 Inch Nails.
Yeah. Hurt.
One that he did, Hurt.
And
I remember on Much Music, which is our MTV, I remember that being played all the time.
Yeah. That one, yeah, because I think even at the time that it was released, what was his wife's name?
Roseanne.
Yeah, she had passed away.
Oh, June, I should say. Roseanne's his daughter. June was his wife.
Yeah. So, I think she had just passed away when that video came out.
Yeah.
And so you're watching this video and she's standing back there on the stairs and
he died like 3 months later. Like there was
yeah.
not a lot of time there.
Yeah. So it was just the lyrics and him doing it and that piano just boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
That's like the lightning in the bottle thing. So
oh yeah, for sure.
So that's the kind of country I like where Willie's done that too. Willie, like with Shotgun Willie, he kind of did that. He brought in a lot of horns. You don't hear horns in country music.
No, generally not.
Right. So he said, I'm gonna do my thing here. We're gonna get away from this stuff. We're gonna do this with the country music. So I'd like to kind of research it and go back and see where that really first began, where they introduced horns or kind of stepped out of the boundaries of country music. Because to me, it's refreshing because pop country is just, it's just
terrible.
But this, where they go over to these other areas and add some blues. I mean, blues and countries are,
they're very similar. Yeah,
they're close cousins.
Yeah.
So, so those are just interesting to me when they take traditional country and add a little flair to it.
Yep.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I like it. All right. I'm up here. All right. I'll make myself big here. Okay. So those that watch Ben Rankins know that he's the spokesman for Australia. And I like to think of myself as the Ben Rankins of Canada.
Yeah, I think you're there. Yep.
Yeah. So, and listen, I'm going to talk about, I did a video for Sam's contest that he did ages ago. And we mentioned Americana before. And there is a Canadiana sound, a Canadian genre that is very, I mean, if you didn't know what country they were from, it sounds like Americana. Very much so. But there's an added extra element in that sort of, and like Canadian people in the Walnut Gallery will understand what I'm trying to say. But there's a little sort of thread that winds through it that also sort of relates about the Canadian experience. But you don't have to be Canadian to know that. But there's a long way of saying that there is a genre very, 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 very similar to Americana that we have here that is absolutely incredible music. But because it's here, chances are you don't get to hear it down there because unfortunately, except for the really huge commercial acts like the Justin Biebers of the world, sorry about that, by the way, also from Stratford, Ontario, the home of the band. The big acts you hear about, but we have such an incredible music scene here that just doesn't get heard outside of here. So to that end, I'm going to talk about some Canadiana albums. So if you like Americana, and Sam is absolutely the expert on this, when he talks about stuff like the Avett Brothers and whatever else, it's kind of like that. And the band who we talked about earlier, who Alex made the point, you could argue that they invented Americana. They also fit into the Canadian genre because it's that same sound, and they have some songs that are tug at our national heartstrings as well. But you don't have to be Canadian to like it. But if you like Americana, what I'm saying is these are bands you would probably like as well because they sound almost the same. So
I don't want to interrupt, but I do have a question about this. So what is the element? Is it something in the lyrics? Is it something in the
often.
The band, I have to be reminded constantly that the band is a Canadian band. I mean, it's filled with an American band. So what is it that you go, oh, that's Canadian?
Well, a lot of it is it's lyric based, right? It's a lot of talking about themes that are sort of tied to our national identity, or things that are sort of the kind of our cultural experience,
Is there a lyric or a line? Yeah.
I mean, some of it is very, very simple. Like, I'll give you an example that pops into my brain. There's a band here, they're no longer together, called the Tragically Hip, and they had some success in the U.S., but they are considered they're Canada's band, and unfortunately, the lead singer died of brain cancer a few years ago. But they had a song called 50 Mission Cap, and it talks about it has to do with hockey, but that's not what it's about. But it talks about someone who played for the Toronto Maple Leafs and ultimately died in a plane crash or whatever. But we all kind of identify with that. So it's just certain. It's not deep by any means, but there's just certain sort of
okay, I see
cultural touchstones. So not important for necessarily the music, but these are bands that if you like that sound of Americana, this is if you didn't know any better, you would think it's the same thing. That is a very long rant, and I apologize. It's
no,
hard
I think
to define.
I kind of wanted to know that because you talk about it all the time, and I'm like, what makes that connection?
It's I know what it is, but it's hard to articulate. And maybe one of these days I'll do something on it. But
yeah, no, makes sense.
The one that I always go with is Blue Rodeo. They're the guys, and they're still doing it almost 40 years on. 15 or 16 albums later, they're still making amazing roots rock, Canadian Americana sounding stuff. This is their Live from Massey Hall album. This came out in 2015, and it's a good place to start. Their catalog is interesting in that the first half of it, up to about 2002, is awesome, and then it gets a little formulaic and tired in the last half of their career. But this is a set from later on in their career, and these guys are a live band. I've seen tons of concerts, and these guys live are absolutely incredible. They can put on a rock show unlike anybody that I've seen, but they're a roots rock kind of band. But this is a good place to start because it's live at the Massey Hall, which is a very storied venue, kind of like the Ryman Auditorium in Nashville. It's essentially our version of that. But this is kind of a career-spanning live show. So if you want to get a little bit of all of it, I mean, this is just a fantastic way to start. It's fronted by two singer-songwriters, Jim Cuddy and Greg Keeler. The two of them, they are and anyone will attest to this that's Canadian, they are Canada's Lennon and McCartney. So
there you go.
Yes, you're holding up Neil Young live from Massey Hall.
Yeah.
Which is that's a very historic venue. And that Neil Young record is a great record as well.
Yeah.
So from there, I'm going to go with the person that we really consider to be the greatest musician that we've ever put out there, Gordon Lightfoot. Everybody knows Gordon Lightfoot, even in the U.S. He's the guy. Him and Neil Young and Joni Mitchell are like the holy trinity. But I think he's the best. What I love about Gordon Lightfoot, he's a storytelling songwriter. It's not songs about love and whatever. They're stories. And I mean, this one has one of the best examples, the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, which was a ship that sunk in the Great Lakes. And it's a story we all know. It's a story we've all been told growing up in school, and we all know about it. And he is the guy that started the entire Canadian music genre. So the man's a legend. Don't need to say more on that.
Come on, Sundown is a big love song, Rob.
Yes.
Love song. It's a stalker love song. It's good.
That's
my favorite song by him. I love that song. I like the whole backstory too. It's awesome.
Well, the backstory you've heard is not what the song's actually about.
No, come on, don't ruin it for me, man.
I'm sorry.
I want to stick with my.
I know what it's about because I know someone that.
Were you there? You're going to say
I wasn't there.
Yeah.
But my friend Bob from Blue Rodeo, he knows Gordon Lightfoot or knew him until he passed away, and he's had conversations about that song. So it is about somebody, but it's not about what you think it's about.
Is this one of the things we can't share on a live stream?
I've been asked not to share it because Lightfoot himself didn't want people to know. He just wanted to leave it open to interpretation.
Expect a phone call tomorrow because I want
to know. Call me, maybe I'll tell you.
Yeah.
So this is someone no one's heard of, but in the vein, actually, I'm showing the wrong record. Let me just, fuck it. This guy here, Adam Baldwin. he started off as a rocker, but in my mind, he's just put out an album last year called Concertos and Serenades. It has a lighthouse on the cover of it. That is, I hate to say it, as good as some of Lightfoot's stuff. It is an album full of telling stories about the hardships of growing up in Eastern Canada. And you don't have to grow up in Eastern Canada to relate to these kind of gritty tales, but you feel. I've only been to Halifax once in my life for a day, but I feel like I've been there because he's so good at painting these, sort of musical tapestries about, how you had to main character, one of the songs resorted to dealing drugs because, the fishing industry was shit. I mean, but he does it in such a beautiful song. He's a singer-songwriter, but a storyteller.
Is he?
And it's very much like this generation's Gordon Lightfoot. It's absolutely incredible.
A lot of acoustic based on that.
On that one, it's acoustic bass, and there's some fiddle in there, but done for texture, not as a featured instrument. But his earlier stuff is very electric, very like Bruce Springsteen, because Springsteen's his hero. But on that folk record, it's incredible. And it also kind of reminds you a little bit of Tom Waits as well, but without the gritty vocals. So
like early Tom Waits, like
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I'll have to check them out.
I'll show two more real quick. Another band called the Skydiggers out of Toronto. They've been around for 35 years as well, and they're, it's mainly two guys, and they've had a revolving cast of supporting musicians over the years. But again, it's that sort of acoustic folk, sort of grassroots kind of, I'll say the stuff that Sam listens to. This is exactly what this is. This is the stuff that Sam would listen to, but just instead of being set in Virginia or Tennessee, it's set in rural Ontario.
I like the album cover. It's kind of trying to figure out.
This is their original album, which I think came out in like 1987 or 1989, something like that. Yeah, just a great. Not too many. I think they only have 3 albums on vinyl at this point, but they've released like 20 some odd albums. But
look,
yeah.
I mean, take a look. So you got 5 kids with a pony sticking his head in there, and this kid, questionable what he's holding there in his hand.
Right.
Be, why they're all just hanging out with a pony. So yeah, I could write a whole story off of that album.
Yeah.
There.
So
yeah.
And then lastly, and I know no one except a few of the Canadians in the comments give a shit about any of this stuff, but it's my duty as the self-appointed Canadian ambassador of the vinyl community when we're talking about subgenres. This is Kathleen Edwards. This is an album she did called Failure. This came out in, I want to say like 2002, let's say, something like that. She, again, is a singer-songwriter, and, she has a song in here called Hockey Skates. I mean, shit, how Canadian can you get? I mean, that's all we do because it's so goddamn cold for half the year. We play hockey.
Hockey skates and back bacon. That's what you got.
Right. So she's had some success in the States. She's been on all the big talk shows and stuff. But again, this is kind of like the Neil Young, Gordon Lightfoot storytelling kind of stuff, but just an incredibly accessible. If you like Americana, there you go. Yeah. So there you go. A bunch of albums no one gives a shit about.
No, I took notes. I'm going to check out The Velvet Insane from Alex, and I'm going to check out Adam Baldwin from you. So there you go.
Yeah. Check out his Concertos and Serenades is the best one I'd recommend. So let's see here. John says, I stole this from a hockey card. I laugh because I know what that means. It's a tragically hip lyric from 50 Mission Cap.
Inside Canadian joke.
Yep. Dan says at least one band member from every Canadian band holds Canada Molson Canadian on every album cover. Yeah, you almost have to. It's what you got to do. I want Canadiana about hockey, poutine, moose encounters, and Mounties. Well, yeah, I'm sure you could probably find. There's lots of songs about hockey. I think of half a dozen off the top of my head.
Now, have they ever done a runoff or so like a whatever for Elsinore Brewery? Have they ever done from Strange Brew the movie? Because this is all I know. Have they ever tried to do like a novelty Elsinore beer?
Not that I'm aware of. Not that I'm aware of. I picked up a Strange Brew record. It was in a box of records someone had given me, and most of it was crap. But I had to keep that one because of you. So
yeah. Did you get the comedy album or the soundtrack?
The comedy album.
Yeah, I can't find the soundtrack anywhere.
Yeah, I know. I haven't seen it anywhere either. Yeah. John says, very creative little city based part on the success of Stratford Festival. Yeah. So he's talking about Stratford, where he's from. It's, there's a famous Shakespearean festival there, and a lot of incredible musical talent has come out of that town. But John could probably tell you better than I can, but I want to say the population of Stratford is probably 50,000 people, maybe less. I don't know. It's a small town, but the amount of musicians that have come out of that city is insane. And Justin Bieber. So notice I said musicians and Justin Bieber. The Canadian economy makes for gritty country. Yeah, absolutely.
Alex, do you have any Justin Bieber albums? Do you have are you keeping them back there somewhere not showing?
I do not, but
Is
but
he
you know what?
just
Look, I mean,
online?
not to trash other people. He still going through it. Doesn't he have like some kind of like face disease or some weird shit?
Yeah,
going
he's
on?
got some kind of like paralysis in half his
Yeah,
face.
palsy,
Yeah, I mean that shit sucks, man.
His house is 15 minutes down the road from me. Justin Bieber's house.
Do you just drive by and go, "You suck"?
I've driven by and flipped the bird just for fun.
Yeah.
You can't see much other than his driveway because it's a very long driveway and it goes over a hill and you can kind of see the house and it backs onto this lake called it's a Push Lynch Lake.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
Google that if you want, folks.
Here we are being judgmental, right? So
I give you the address, folks, if you want to stalk Justin Bieber.
he has a
No,
great.
I'm kidding. I'm not. Don't ban me, YouTube. I'm totally kidding.
Yeah.
Richard says Gordon Lightfoot, a classic singer, songwriter, storyteller by a long mile. Absolutely.
I want to get more into him, but I just can't. Sometimes I can't get past his voice, and I don't know why. I think I just need to absorb more Gordon Lightfoot.
I mean, the easiest place to start if you want to be really accessible is Gord's Gold, which was his greatest hits up to the mid 70s.
Okay.
And he re-recorded everything for that. So, I mean, it's not live, but it's good. It's the best place to start. Spirit of the West, yeah, great band from Vancouver. When we were talking about Irish stuff, I mentioned them, and I was talking about their drinking song, "Home for a Rest." Prairie Oyster was a great country band. Yep. Kathleen Edwards left the music scene, opened a coffee shop called Quitters in Streetsville, Ontario, just outside of Ottawa, but she came back. Yeah, her new album called Total Freedom is fantastic. Take off to the Great White North.
That's all we knew. I grew up with the steamroller and the mouse in the bottle and Hosehead. And
yeah, we don't use any of those. So,
and I never even associate. As a kid, you don't associate with Canadian anything. Then as you get older through your teens, what was their version of Saturday Night Live, SLTV? With John Candy,
SCTV.
Yeah. So then I got it in the A, and you realize it was more like a stereotype. It was true, So, but I love that.
John corrected me. I said Stratford is probably less than 50,000 people, 34,000. So I wasn't too far out. There's Sam. How you doing, Sam? Has it been a good one? Yeah, it's been a good one, but we missed you. Hopefully we'll be back with us next week. He was just busy, couldn't make it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we know you guys love each other. So
it's my guy. And look at these two. Now, you guys didn't do any music together. I was expecting at least like one song.
Look, man, it's like the Basement Tapes, man. That shit might get released in 8 years.
So there's something. Okay, there's something in the background.
You'll have to find those original tapes somewhere here.
Yeah.
So I wanted to see you and Sam doing his front porch version of Picture.
Yes.
You got to pay extra. That's some pay-per-view type shit, Rob.
Yeah, who would have been Sheryl Crow in that situation?
Well, get enough beers into Alex. You never know.
Did he even let you touch the new guitar, or that just stayed in the case?
I didn't play the new guitar. I played his because I used to play guitar. So one of the first things we did was I took out his old guitar and
it's like I have the Sheryl Crow model acoustic over here. Nobody plays that. Nobody touches my Sheryl
Rob
Crow.
does.
No, nobody touches it. It stays in there. You can play my old Gibson back there.
If you ever come up here, John, you can play my beloved '78 Telecaster right there.
All right, then I'll bring my Sheryl Crow. Okay.
Perfect.
Be a good trade-off. There you go.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah.
Apparently, your tapes were covered in buffalo sauce. I don't want to know what you guys are up to.
Was there a lot
Did
of
you
plastic?
at least get your chicken finger calzone?
Oh, yeah, a couple. Yeah, for sure.
Not just
I don't know
one.
if Sam ate the rest of his though, man. He had to take his little box home.
Well, I'm trying to figure out too where you watch the documentary in the middle of everything that you guys.
You guys got a lot crammed into 2 days.
Yeah, you went to a record show.
Yeah, we also did a lot.
I'm waiting for the. Yeah, I want the rest of the video. Yeah, I want the good video. We're gonna have to pay for that probably, right?
Yeah,
It'll be on
gonna
their
cost you,
OnlyFans
John, for
account.
sure. That's pay-per-view, man.
Yeah,
So
YouTube Plus or whatever it is. As long as I get a super sticker, we're good to go.
there you go.
Be right back.
Well, gentlemen. Oh well, Alex is walking away. I was going to sign off, but now we got to wait for Alex to come back.
So I'm wondering on that. So you're using this mic over here now, Rob? Is that the?
Oh yeah, I've been using it for a while. I've had it for probably 6 months or so.
Okay.
It's on a little boom that's clamped on my desk. But when I started doing regular episodes for the Vining Community Podcast, you got to have a little bit better audio than just what my computer was recording because it's got to sound nice. So
Right.
this is it's not. I mean, it wasn't expensive. It was I don't know $60 or whatever off Amazon, but it does the trick. So
Yeah.
it just stays clamped on my desk the whole time. So
So you just plug it right in through the USB and.
yeah, my laptop's plugged into a docking station because I got another monitor in that here. So the mic's just plugged into the docking station, so it's always on.
Yeah. That's cool though. I'm glad you kind of went into that. You kind of take things for granted. Like in America, you take for granted the American music. But it's kind of cool to hear your perspective on the Canadian, where we don't get it, and maybe there's certain things you don't get that we get in America. And there's this Canadian thing. Yeah.
I like Americana music, and it's great. And I mean, I know a fraction of a percent of what Sam knows. He is obviously the resident expert.
Yeah, I can't keep up with them on this.
No, and it's impressive. But
Cool.
I just kind of wanted to highlight that it's a genre that I'm passionate about because I like to support local talent. But they're so similar, like they're closer than first cousins. You know what I mean? And if you like one, you'll like the other, and the cultural touchstones are really irrelevant. You can listen to it and miss the references and it not detract from anything. It's just there's a whole other pool of it out there that unfortunately it's almost like there's an invisible wall at the border and it doesn't get through. So
yeah, and I think I don't know if I'm trying to put a finger on why I can't get into a lot of the modern stuff. And it's almost, you've been here, you listen to music for 40 plus years. It's almost like been there, done that. Something's got to really just catch me, and I wonder if that's what it is, because I want to support newer stuff or whatever, but I just wonder if that's what's keeping me away from it just kind of catching me,
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see here. A couple other things before we sign off. Richard's saying, funny that very little UK, Britpop, Manchester, Northern Soul, etc. genres came up today. I thought about Britpop because I have some. I've got some Oasis. I've got some Blur. I've got the new Liam Gallagher, John Squire album, which is phenomenal.
Yeah, I could have brought up. Well, you're talking about cross genre now. We could have brought up Ray Charles because he definitely went into a country area.
Yep.
Went over to jazz. He touched on jazz, R&B. So yeah, we could have brought up Ray Charles. Shame on me for not bringing up Ray Charles.
Alex, John wants to know, do you know of the Dirty Nil? I know of the Dirty Nil from Hamilton. They're phenomenal. Check them out, Alex. Give them a Google or whatever.
It's a couple Canadian power poppers I got to check out.
Dirty Nil is fantastic. All right, guys. We'll go around the horn quick. I mean, anyone got anything coming up in the works? Alex, you got anything on tap other than beer?
Nah. Yeah, no. I think I'm here in the next couple of days be doing some kind of power pop primer, as I'm going to call it. I don't know. It's just been something that's been on my mind for a little while, and something that's just excited me. So, yeah. And then I have I'll say for all the people out there watching, I guess Sunday or so is the last day to comment on my interview I did with Terry Cole from Coal Mine. And so if you want to be entered into the drawing to win a $50 gift card to Plaid Room Records, go ahead and comment on that video. You can do that. But I do have another actual interview coming up this coming Friday with somebody that's pretty cool. Not necessarily in the record world, but a musician, orchestrator, arranger who's been on a lot of different pieces of music over the years, including like some pretty crazy like shit on Disney and stuff. So I'm pretty pumped about that, which is great. But yeah, just keep on slugging away, as it were, and yeah, good stuff.
What about you, John? You got anything in the pipeline?
Yeah, I just finished. Told you earlier about the YouTube video that I just finished up. I've been doing a little series. I guess I'm hitting like the trifecta, 3 albums in a row. I don't know how this started, but I just did a YouTube one, and I just listened to 3 Neil Diamond albums. Believe it or not, from the early Neil, first 3 albums by Neil.
Nice.
So, because I never really thought about it. I knew there was a cool period of Neil Diamond. There is.
I think every period of Neil Diamond is cool.
There's definitely some cheesy, hard to get through areas.
I saw him in concert, and he was fucking phenomenal.
Yeah, and I regret never seeing him in concert.
Oh, so thankful I got to see him.
Yeah. So I'm working on that one. I have a little rating system I use, and I'm just kind of looking at it. Do I like these Neil Diamond albums? And the only other thing I'm working on, I'm trying to think of, because I told you I'm going to Colorado here in a couple weeks. First time into snow, ski experience, whatever. Hopefully I'm not going to be throwing up the whole time, because we're way low down here in Florida. It's pretty high.
You're way up there, mile high.
Yeah. So I want to figure out something for that trip. My daughter has a channel, so we'll be doing something for her channel. But I want to do something musically, but I don't want to do like a snow theme thing, so I'm trying to figure that out. So we'll see what comes of it.
Nice.
Yeah.
As for myself, I'll have a video on Sunday. I don't know what it's going to be yet. I always have one on Sunday. But before then, I think I got to do, I promised Brian from Embryonic Robot that I would do one. He's been doing a 2-parter already, but it's probably going to be a 3 or 4-parter, songs about Toronto. And as the self-proclaimed ambassador of Canadian music in the violent community, I'm like, well, I got to do this too. So Brian's anxiously awaiting my contribution to that. So I got to get that done before the weekend. So maybe Friday I'll have some time because it's a holiday. So I'll songs about Toronto, not that anyone cares. And then I don't know what my regular video on Sunday will be yet, but I'll figure out something. So
yeah, very cool.
That's it. That's all. Thank you, John, for filling in. We really appreciate it. And
yeah, I'm glad it worked out. I'm kind of glad I can be the filler guy, when you need me. Yeah,
love it.
Yeah.
When we do, we'll in the next little while we'll schedule the Chameleon episode to make sure you can join us for that. That would be great. So everybody subscribe to Music Talk with John, and as usual, Alex from Beer and Vinyl, and we will be back next Wednesday. Same vinyl time, same vinyl channel. So thanks everybody for watching. Have a great night.
See ya.